Hi, this is Bill Farmer, and you're listening to the FSF Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the FSF Podcast. Very excited today because we have an actor, a voice actor, an industry icon here to talk with us today. And I am really excited. Now, I've been talking with this gentleman since about November. We've been playing email tag back and forth. And so I'm so excited that he's here today. And you, of course, know him according to IMDb as the voice of Foghorn Leghorn, Sylvester the Cat, Yosemite Sam, Secret Squirrel on Harvey Birdman. That one was new to me. I was pretty excited about that. You've heard him in Baldur's Gate. And for a majority of my life anyway, he has been the voice of Pluto and Goofy for the Walt Disney World Company. I am so excited to welcome Bill Farmer to the FSF Podcast. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Oh, thanks, Tim, for having me on. It's my pleasure. And I'd forgotten a little bit about Secret Squirrel, too. That was a one-time only thing. So, yeah, it's good to be refreshed of that. As I get older, sometimes I have to go to IMDb. I did that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we always look at IMDb like the Wikipedia of the entertainment world. So anytime something is listed on there, there's been so many interviews where I'm like, I always say according to IMDb, because that way, if it's wrong, technically, yes, I'm still wrong, but I feel a little bit better about it if it's IMDb.
Now you can blame someone else,
Exactly. There's culpable deniability. So one of the things, though, Bill, that has become a staple to our show is we love talking to people about their backgrounds, how they got started, what got them into being the person that we have on the other side of the virtual table. Right. So in the story of Bill Farmer, what were the influences on you as a young man that made you want to consider a career in the arts and entertainment world?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I grew up in a little town in south central Kansas, Pratt, Kansas, town of about 7,000. We had wheat and tornadoes. That's about all we had growing up. And one movie theater, little podunk hick kind of town out there in the middle of nowhere. And there wasn't much kind of outlet for theatrical. There was 3 channels on the black and white TV and 1 theater, but I just kind of gravitated toward that in the world of imagination and fantasy. And I think, looking back on it, I think I actually have pinned down the movie that made me want to get into the show business, world. And that was the 7th Voyage of Sinbad. That was a Ray Harryhausen adventure thing. I think his first color one, actually. And it had Cyclops and giant, fighting skeletons and dragons and stuff like that. And it just took me to a whole new world. And I just thought to myself, gosh, that would be great to be able to work in something like that. That was the first thing that I ever remember thinking, wow, what a fun time it would be to be in entertainment. Never thinking that it would happen. Never thinking that it was a possibility at all, because South Central Kansas is a million miles away from Hollywood. Sure. Well, long story short, as I got older, I started playing with voices, just cartoons, movie stars, comedians on the Ed Sullivan Show. You remember that old show? And now on our show, the Sing Bears, and they would have the old comedians. They'd have George Barnes and he'd come out there and tell jokes and stuff and Jack Benny and a lot of other comedians. And I would play with those voices and I'd try them around the house. And I'd go to dinner and, I'd say, Mom, I would like some mashed potatoes, please. And my dad would look at me and there's something wrong with that kid, But my friends thought it was fun. And much older, when I was able to drive, I would go through places like Burger King or McDonald's. And my friends would put me up to doing voices. Hey, do a weird voice. And I would, I'd say, I'd like a Whopper with cheese, and Arnold the pig would like a Coca-Cola. And they'd look and laugh. And it was just kind of a fun thing. And I did pep assemblies in high school. But again, it was just for laughs. It wasn't really anything that I thought would ever turn into anything. And I went to the University of Kansas, got my degree in broadcast journalism, and I got into radio, which was as close to show business as there was in those days. And I was a DJ and a chief engineer at several stations in Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas. And then much, much later, I was at a comedy club in Dallas. This was back, I can tell you the date, March 17th of 1982. And I looked up and it was like an open mic night where anyone could get up and do 5 minutes of comedy. And so I said, I'm going to try that next week, because they had it every Tuesday night. And so the next week I went up, I wrote a little routine, just doing some of these voices, and it got a very good reception. And the host of the show, the local host there, who's gone on to fame, a guy named Bill Engvall. He is with Jeff Foxworthy, Larry the Cable Guy. He was kind of in that
the
trio. Blue collar comedy. He was the first one that said, I think you got something. You ought to try and do this. And I said, I've always wanted to be in show business. Oh, why not? The worst they can do is yell me off the stage, and I can quit and do anything else that I wanted to do. But it got better and better over the months, and I started getting to a point where I'd open, then I would middle, and I just started getting to headline status, where an agent in Dallas said, with all the voices you do, you ought to go out to Hollywood and see what you could do there. I got an apartment out here in Hollywood. Left my wife in Dallas, so I commuted for nearly a year while I was out here seeing what would happen. I was able to get an agent, and about 5 months after I got here, my agent said, do you do any of the Disney characters? And, if you can do a falsetto, you're kind of in the ballpark of Mickey and gosh, oh boy, so I thought I could do that. Donald, I can't really do. That's all I can do. But Gworsh, Goofy was right in the wheelhouse. He was my favorite character growing up of the Disney characters. And out of about 1,100 people that tried out, didn't know it was that many until much, much later, they picked me. Now, they don't pick you for, to give you a crown and you're now the voice of Goofy forever. It's for one job. And that was on January 23rd of 1987. And then they called again about a month later, a month after that, and kept calling. And now I've done about 4,000 shows for Disney over the last 37 years and became a Disney legend in 2009. So I think I pretty well have the job by now.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anybody else, as long as you're taking in oxygen, that's gonna pull that
right.
anytime soon.
I'm hoping.
Well, that's
kind of
really
truncated a version of it, but that's kind of how I got here.
No, that's a great story. It's always kind of interesting, because sometimes when we talk to people, they, like you just mentioned, there's intersections with other people who are on their way up and doing different things, and so it's kind of interesting to know that somewhere along those lines, you were rubbing shoulders with a pre-blue collar comedy guy. So that's kind of interesting to me, but because I've always really enjoyed Diamond Calls Who You Know.
There were some great comics that came out of Texas, especially the Houston area, like Sam Kinison was a kind of contemporary of mine, Bill Hicks, a lot of other guys that you may know. And so they were kind of going through the same things. And some of the acts that came through the Comedy Corner, which was the name of the club, and saw what I did, they were very, hey, go for it. Yeah, I think you got something. And that kind of, a little pat on the back and a little bit of encouragement went a long way. Although, because stand-up comedy is kind of rough, it can be really rough because crowds are, if you're not funny, they'll let you know. So learn from an audience. It's the best training ever, because if you can survive that, genuinely, they're not just saying, oh, that was a wonderful joke. No, they'll either laugh or they don't. It's genuine.
Right.
And you learn from that. So, and that actually came in very handy in the booth with doing animation, because in the booth, it's you and a microphone and the script and the director. And you've got to kind of know how to get those words off the page and give them life. And I learned that when I was doing stand-up.
Okay. So thinking about the role of Goofy, you talked about how
Yeah.
you went and you tried out for that, and so once you got the role back in '87, was there um did you take notes or get inspiration from previous voice actors from that role, or were you just kind of at that point just kind of, well, this is how I'm going to go after the voice?
There's a little bit of both. In the very beginning, my audition was I got a cassette tape of some cartoons, the vocal of Pinto Colvig, who was the original voice of Goofy, from
Okay.
cartoons like Ghost Hunters and Boat Builders and things from the mid 30s and everything. And I just copied it as closely as I could in the audition. And you learn to be a voice mimic that way. And if you listen and play back the recordings and kind of adjust, eventually you'll get fairly close, I think. But you just don't have a sense of the personality of the character. That takes time. And it took me 2 or 3 years to really kind of understand, okay, Goofy would say it this way, rather than just copying something that's already been done. So if it's new dialogue that Goofy had never said before, that could present a problem. Like, how would he say this? I'm not really sure. I kind of got the sound of the voice, but I don't have the personality behind it. And over time, and you watch the old cartoons, you kind of get an idea of what the character's like. And then there came like an epiphany once. I actually had to do a thing for Disneyland where I had to do the spiel on the monorail. Now we're
Yeah.
traveling 30 miles an hour above the parking lot. And they wanted Goofy to do it for one particular event. And it's not anything that was written for Goofy. And I didn't know how to do it, because how would Goofy say these kinds of things? By doing it and then just kind of, okay, let the character kind of come in and take over, and kind of don't second guess it, just feel it. It got better and better. And before long, I kind of could say anything and it sounded like Goofy was really saying it. I had learned the character. I'd become the character.
Okay. So thinking about that and your own exploration of the character and becoming the character, what advice would you give voice actors who are coming into the business now? Clearly not for your job, but for other jobs that other roles. What advice would you have wanted to have as a young man coming into the business?
Well, when I moved to California, I took classes from a guy named Dawes Butler, who was a great voice actor with Hanna-Barbera, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry
Yep.
Hound, all of those characters were his. And he gave lessons. And I went over to his house, and he was the one that really emphasized that it's not voice acting, it's voice acting. It's the acting which is the most important part, because unless you can have the emotion push these words out, it sounds kind of hollow or fake, or like you're putting on a voice and doing a voice rather than being a character that has that voice. And it's a kind of a fine line there of what you do. But if you practice becoming the character in your mind, and I have to put Bill over here on the shelf when I become Goofy and let more of Goofy kind of come in, and whatever character it is, you just kind of have to become that character for those lines. And the more you practice that, I think the more genuine the performance is going to be. So the advice I give is take acting lessons, whether it's an animated cartoon or a stage play or a film. It's all acting. There are different techniques, and you kind of for example, animation is very close, I think, to stage acting, because on stage you do grander gestures so the people in the back of the theater can see you. A little bit louder, pushed a little bit more so the people back there can hear. Whereas film is right in your face. The camera's like right there, and you don't have to do a whole lot to get across an emotion, and you can do it with your face. Whereas your voice, when it's just your voice, you have to do everything with your voice. So you kind of have to push it a little bit more. So take acting lessons, and anything you can get in front of a live audience is very helpful. It kind of teach you how to say a line, to tell a joke, to get the line across. And you'll get feedback from a live audience that you won't get anywhere else.
Okay. Yeah, because another voice actor that we spoke with, like actually several, had given pretty similar advice to what you had about making sure that you don't skip the acting class portion
Yeah.
of the training. But some, you talked about being in front of a live audience. Now, some have recommended improv because
Yeah.
of the immediacy of having to think on your feet, being in front of the live audience, getting that immediate feedback. Now, for you, I'm assuming that was your version of that was being during your stand-up career, correct?
Yeah. And we would, at my club in Dallas, we would have an improv night from time to
Oh,
time.
okay.
So improv is very important and very good for that. It's just being on, just being on, and you have to become those characters. So you're going to respond in that, and hopefully in a funny way too for the crowd. But yeah, improv's important. Acting's important. Just getting up in front of people so you can kind of get over stage fright, which we all have. And it's intimidating to be in a vocal booth with a guy looking at you through a window and, okay, read this, make it good. Okay, that's a little intimidating. But if you've been in front of a live audience with stand up, you know what terror is. So you got to learn to deal with it.
Sure, I bet. I've never been in front of a live audience for stand up. I've given plenty of presentations in front of large groups and things like that. I still remember the first one that I ever did. I was walking back and forth on the back of this building that we were at, and I had about 5 minutes before I was supposed to go up and do my part, and I was pacing, just pacing. And I think if somebody came up to me, smacked me on the back, and just gave me a couple encouraging words, and then like kind of turned and pointed me up to the stage and had to push. But once I got through that, I was fine. That first couple minutes, I think I wore a hole in the carpet going back and forth.
I believe it. Yeah. Before comedy shows, yeah, most guys are like into their mind. You don't usually talk to them too much because they're trying to get their material going. Okay, then I'm going to do this and that, and kind of running lines and stuff like that, and going through that little pre-show terror bit that we all go through. The nice thing about animation, I've got my script, I've got the words, so I don't
Sure.
have to worry about memorization and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier in that regard.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the other interviews we did, another voice actor, and I said, "Well, what do do you have a preference between being because they did both live action and voice acting?" And I said, "Do you prefer one over the other?" And she's like, "Well, especially the way things have changed over the last few years, I gotta say, voice acting has its benefits. Being able to do it from home in my pajamas and having my script in front of me where I don't
Yeah.
have to memorize anything." She's like,
Yeah,
"That's
COVID changed everything. COVID
yeah,
changed a lot because I did all of my Disney stuff from home, and my son's an audio engineer, so I'd hire him to come over and run the board, and we'd have the microphone right there. And sometimes we still do it that way. Sometimes if hey, you want to do it from home or something? If my son's coming over, I say, can we do it from my home studio? And they say, sure, no problem. And
that's
it
great."
it is easy to walk down the hall, and yeah, that made it nice.
Yeah, just your favorite goofy slippers and a cup of coffee, and just go
Yeah,
to work.
that a little coffee and stuff like that, and yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we mentioned in the intro about projects that I was unaware of that you had participated. We mentioned Harvey Birdman. My producer John mentioned that there was a 1997 Star Wars fan film that you were part of called Troops.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yeah. We actually recorded that at my studio here. At least my part. I was an announcer, kind of one of those, the following show is, I think it's something like troops filmed before a live audience today, or I forgot what I said. But we just did a little bit of that. And yeah, so there's a lot of little things. I've done probably 30 or 40 different movies that people have no idea that I was in. Like probably the most obscure thing that I've ever done, I think, was in Beauty and the Beast. I did some background voices in that. People attacking
okay,
it's called ADR, additional
yeah,
dialogue recording, where they add incidental characters like crowd
great.
scenes or something. In that movie, if in the scene where Gaston is like talking about decorating with antlers, and he's singing a big song and everything, and he
Yeah.
throws 3 eggs up in the air, and the eggs go. That's me. I'm eggs. So that's probably the most scared, most vocal thing I've ever done in a movie. And yeah, a lot of the Disney movies, Pixar movies, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Monsters University, then oh my gosh, a lot of Illumination movies, Sing, Secret Life of Pets, The Lorax, things like that. I've done about 30 or 40 movies. I forgot what the
Interesting.
one I just did not too long ago. It was one from overseas, and it was called like the uh, Four Souls of the Coyote, or I know I'm screwing up the name, but I did that from here, and they directed it from, I think, France, actually. So that happens from time to time. And yeah, there's a lot of cartoons. I did a show called Amphibia, which I love, for 3 seasons on Disney Plus. Love that show. The 7D, a lot of movies, and but Goofy in all has been by far the most prolific. I've been since 2006. I've been on about every day on something. Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. We're now
Sure.
recording Mickey Mouse, kind of some more of those, and some stop motion animation things. And yeah, they keep calling. I'm doing them. I'm doing something on Friday, actually. So that's
Excellent.
tomorrow. Yeah, so I better check my emails. It can be that we need you tomorrow, or we'll need you. Actually, it's on Monday, come to think of it. So I got a weekend to worry about it.
There you go. You got a weekend to prep. Okay. But when you go to cons, because that's how you and I met in person,
Yeah.
is there any, like, when somebody comes up to you and mentions that has surprised you, that like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that, or I'm surprised that you knew about that I was in that movie? Have you ever had that moment at a con where somebody
Oh, yeah.
mentions
They'll bring up things to sign. I did uh, an old LucasArts a game, the one I did like last weekend up in Sacramento. Sam and Max Hit the Road, which is a LucasArts game back in the early '90s, and I was the original voice for Sam in that. A great game, and I'd totally forgotten about that for a little bit. And then they brought back a picture, of the title of the, like the CD box and things like that, or they'll bring me a Goofy movie quite often in the old VHS package. And yeah, they'll bring a lot of things to sign. And the thing I guess that I get most out of Comic Cons is just hearing how these characters affect people. Because, of course, in the booth, you lay the lines down, and then you may see the cartoon on TV in about a year, but you don't get a sense of how it affects people and what they think of it. And people, gosh, for the last 30 years almost, have been coming up that like a Goofy movie is probably the number one thing people talk about. And that, oh man, Goofy movie, I couldn't talk to my dad, and that became our movie, and it brought us together. And now it's been around long enough. It says, boy, when I was a kid, I took Goofy's son, Max, his point of view. And now I've got kids, I've taken Goofy's point of view. So, it's a full circle, the circle of life.
That's great. Well, it's interesting that you bring up the Goofy movie, because that was, so Kathleen, like I said, couldn't be here today, but she has a question for you, and it's regarding the Goofy movie. So I'm going to read this word for word from Kathleen. So
Okay.
Otherwise, if I try to paraphrase it, we're going to have an issue here. And I have to see her later, and don't want to get in trouble. So, all right. She says, I'm sure you get stories all the time from fans about how your performance as their favorite animated character has impacted their lives. I wanted to share that the Goofy movie was one of my absolute favorites growing up. My sister and I watched it so many times, I literally cannot remember how many times. And as a kid, I was definitely on Max's side, but now watching it as a parent, and after losing my dad, I realized that I would give anything to go on one more camping trip with my father.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. She says, can you tell us about one of your favorite stories or fan interactions that you've had with people with a story like hers?
Probably, well, let's see. Well, it wasn't particularly with a Goofy movie, but was with Goofy in general.
Okay.
And I was in Florida at a television Hall of Fame like induction, the 10th annual, and they had all these stars, and we got to meet this. We got to go to the dinner, and got to go to. There's a dog barking, and we, this is a dog house. That's my son's dog Pepper, and but I got to meet Muhammad Ali at this pre-party to this television show, and I was just I was amazed to get a chance to meet him and shook his hand. Oh, it's a great honor to meet you and everything. And I told him what I did, and then he looked at me and said, "Do you ever talk to kids in hospitals?" And I said, "Yeah, Make-A-Wish Foundation, Famous
Mhm.
Phone Friends, other organizations. If child wants to talk to Mickey, Donald, Goofy, whatever, we call from time to time." And he said, "Man, then you're my hero," and shook my hand. And that I've never forgotten that moment. That just gave me chills, and it's giving me goosebumps right now. I mean, that was what is important to him. And when we talk, and it's rare, but we do talk to kids, and a lot of them are quite sick. We had a girl that had, I think, leukemia, and she wanted to
Okay.
talk to Mickey and the gang, and we were on the phone with her and everything. She didn't talk much. I don't think she had the strength to do that. But after we were over, and Mickey was saying, when Pluto takes his medicine, he feels a lot better, and it was simple as that. Well, we got a letter about 3 months later that because of that, the girl's attitude changed, and she started taking her medicine more willingly, doing the chemotherapy and everything, and went into
Oh, wow.
remission. So, you start thinking, wow, that's important stuff. These things are not just fun little animated characters. There's a strength there with a lot of people that
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't realize. And I always try and keep that in my mind when I'm doing this. And I try and do my best job. And because some days you go in, you don't feel like, I'm not feeling that great today, but you try and give it 100% because of those kind of interactions with that. This is important stuff. It doesn't seem like it is. It's just doing silly voices for an animated dog and whatever, but there's more to it than that. There's a much deeper meaning to a lot of people, and so you got to honor that, and I try to as much as I can.
That's beautiful. I think of now for personally for ourselves. My family has two very large fandoms that we follow very closely. One of them is anything that's Disney related. We're Disney fanatics. We love anything Disney, and it just so happens that we can say it's one fandom now because Lucasfilms is now owned by Disney. So I'm a huge
Hmm.
Star Wars fan. And
Oh yeah.
my kids have grown up around Star Wars and all these things. About 5 years ago, my daughter came down with a condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and we were in the hospital for a long, long time. And I just remember early on we had so there's a local cosplay group, and they're all over the United States. It's called the 501st, and they go to different events dressed up in Star Wars characters. They go to um, children's hospitals, and excuse me a second. Um, anyway, I just remember the 501st coming into my daughter's room, and that had such a huge impact on her because she was 12 and very unsure about things, kind of scared about things. But here comes these people dressed up, in characters and fandom that we love and that we recognize, and they had little things to give her and talk with her. And I mean, it was awkward to have Darth Vader in a children's hospital, but
Yeah.
we don't usually let Darth Vader around younglings anymore. But yeah, it was a very touching thing, and I can see, from my own experience, the power and the importance of these things. And so
Yeah.
for somebody who has gone through these things, I'd like to say thank you for taking the opportunity to do that. That is a huge, huge thing, and it means so much to the families that are involved.
Oh, well, thanks. It really is, and I totally understand. It's amazing the power of fantasy and
Yep.
animation and Star Wars and things like that. It's like, I don't know what it's like. It's just there's a power to it. There is a power beyond what you think. It's weird in a way.
Absolutely. I agree. All right, let's move on to something that's not going to make me cry. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, we'll go back to IMDb for a second. So we noticed all the different things that you've been part of. I mentioned the first and second Baldur's Gates games. You played Goofy in the Kingdom Hearts series. Now, between video games and all the animated things that you've been a part of, do you ever find it strange to hear your own voice coming out of the television or the video game if you play the video games at all?
It is to a degree. I'm usually worrying about, my acting and think, oh, why did they pick that take or whatever? But no, I can sit back, especially with Goofy. I've done it for so long and so many times. I can enjoy the show and I can enjoy the acting and not be too attached to it. I kind of step back and kind of watch it for what it is. And it's interesting to do those, though. For example, Kingdom Hearts. A lot of people always ask me about that, as it's a big fan favorite.
Oh yeah.
And it's totally different. It's unlike anything else we've ever done. First of all, it's the longest running series that we've done of anything. 2002 is when the first game came out. I think we're getting about ready to do the fourth one. I know it was released in Japan, and we usually do the English version of it after that. So I'll be getting a call one of these days from Disney that we're going to do Kingdom Hearts 4. And but it's unusual because it was done in Japan first. And so when I'm in there, I'm doing it to picture because the game's already been done. And I'm hearing the Japanese Goofy in my headphones. And I have to put the English line like, come on, Sora, let's go, whatever it is. But I'm hearing the Japanese version of that because the guy that does the Japanese Goofy, and it's like, oh, Doshima Kajo, oh, or whatever. And I don't, it's very odd to hear. And he'd learned how to do the laugh from me because we did some tapes a long time ago to around the world. So whoever's doing Goofy can like do the laugh. And the basic laugh is like, oh, yeah, Gworsh, but he had broken it down into three parts. It was like, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, oh. It was very odd in my headphones. And he speaks faster than me, and I've got to put the English words in the same amount of time on screen that he did in Japanese so they don't have to reanimate too much. And that's difficult. I kind of have to hurry along. Come on, Sora, let's go, or something like that, a little faster. But it's a unique challenge because everything, it's not like linear. You don't start at the beginning and go to the end. They'll give you a big book with like thousands of lines, and they'll say, go to, page 7, line 34. You do that. Come on, Sora, line 87, page 12, hiya, Mickey, or whatever the line is. And you go through the whole thing like that. They're these little unconnected lines. And until you see the game played, and I'm not good at those games, that's why I either have my son show me, what did I do? Or someone would show me what the scene was. I don't really have a sense of it. And people will ask me, well, what's the plot of what did you like about it? I don't know. I just did the lines and then they stuck them in there and made a story out of this stuff. I'm the last person you should ask.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's one of the things I think that, before I've been doing this podcast now and the podcasting September will be 4 years. And one of the things I didn't understand that I understand now is that very instance right there is that, going into, video games, the person who's reading the lines, doing the lines probably doesn't know what the plot of the story is. They just have a sheet, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
but
we really
but before this, it was like, Oh, well, you're part of that. You must know everything that's going on. So why don't you?
We're the
Yeah,
last in it. And people think that we know, when are you going to be doing Kingdom Hearts 4? I have no idea. I got in so much trouble with Kingdom Hearts 3 because it took a long time after I recorded before they brought the game out. And someone asked
okay.
me once, when is Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out? And I just said, oh, I guess by the end of the year. That was totally a guess. It's not, Bob Iger doesn't call me up and, Bill, we're releasing Kingdom Hearts 3 by they don't. I have
Right.
no idea. And so then it went trending on the internet,
Oh
and Bill
no.
Farmer said that the Kingdom Hearts 3 is, you can expect it by the end of the year. No, I just guessed. I had no idea. So I get
Oh
a
no.
call and say, oh, the Walt Disney Company. Okay. So I know what that's about. And they said, what did you say? And I said, I don't know. I just said it'd probably come out by the end of the year. I don't know. They don't tell me. So I'm not that great a font of information about things.
Sure.
I can say what I said, but I don't know what the game is and all of that kind of stuff.
Fair enough. All right, Bill, you've made it this far in the interview. We have one final question for you. We call
Okay.
it our silly question. And we asked this question because my co-host Kathleen noticed that people would ask this of her daughter, but not of her. And she thought that, well, she should be asked this too. Because at a certain age, people just stop asking adults. So, Bill Farmer, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, it had to be T-Rex. Had to be T-Rex growing up because I remember, what was the movie? It was we're on an island, and they kind of there was a brontosaurus and a T-Rex. T-Rex was always fun in the movies, and I saw a skeleton of one in Chicago when I was probably about 10 years old, and went up there to the Natural History Museum,
Mhm.
and then they had a skeleton of a T-Rex.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that had dinosaurs in it, comic books, movies. I was a horror fan when I was a kid. The movie King Kong is one of the first movies I ever saw. That had a brontosaurus in it. That had T-Rexes and things in it. And those things, just like I say, that just made me want to get into this business in the first place. And if I ever do, I've actually done a horror film. I've
Oh
done a
yeah.
couple of them to be in a small budget ones. I did one called Desert Shadows a couple of years ago, and they'd asked me to be in this, and it was shot up in Reno. And I said, well, I want to be in it, but is there a way that I can get killed by the monster? And I do. It's so cool. I mean, it was like they put it in my mouth with blood and everything, and I get impaled and just guts are flying every. It was so much fun to do. I mean, my wife would never watch it, but it was fun to do. So that was
I
definitely a bucket list thing that I got because of my loves of dinosaurs and particularly the T-Rex.
All right. Well, that's very cool. Well, Bill, thank you so much for being on our show today. Where can our listeners and viewers go to find out more about you and what you've got coming?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm at Comic Cons all over the place. I'm going next weekend to Albany, New York, and I can't even remember the name of the event, which is typical with me. I'm always on Disney Plus. There's all sorts of stuff that I keep doing. We're doing some, like I say, stop motion animation Mickey shorts, where we'll be doing those next week. I have at Goofy Bill, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff. I'm not a big social media person. I'm older and I still use a typewriter, I think. So,
Fair enough.
but I'm out there and I'm still working and I'm still totally proud. People always say, you're old enough to be retired. When are you going to retire? And I said, why? Why would I ever retire from what I consider the most fun job that a person can have? I've been very fortunate, and I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can.
There you go. I was going to say, as long as you're having fun, there's no need to retire.
Exactly. Exactly. Got to do something.
There you go. Might as well keep yourself busy with something you enjoy. So we'll make sure that we do put your social links down in the show notes down below so that people can look you up and see if and when you do post something on the socials, they'll be able to check it out from there. And so, guys, we want to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to help our show to continue to grow. So please go ahead and click that little like and subscribe thing. It's right down there somewhere. Don't worry about it. John will put it on the screen. But go ahead and click that and check out Bill on his social media channels. Even if he's not there often, there'll still be some notes every now and then. And but yeah, please subscribe. It helps far more than we can ever tell you. And check out Bill's work as well. I have a new horror movie apparently I have to watch because I have to go see Bill get impaled. But on that note, we will say thank you one more time to Bill Farmer, and we will say thank you for watching the FSF Podcast. Goodbye.
Gworsh, thanks.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.